Hello, and welcome to another episode of Yellfire Conversations Combating the Lie of White Supremacy. I'm your host, Craig Pelkey-Landis, the author of A Brief History of White Nonsense. It's coming up on its second anniversary since I published A Brief History of White Nonsense, so excited about that. If you could, wherever you're listening or watching, if you could like or subscribe to Yellfire, that would be awesome. If you could rate us positively, if possible, that would also be helpful. Appreciate you. Thanks so much for that. My guest today understands better than most how individual freedom and collective liberation are intertwined. Erin Corine, founder and CEO of Hola Magnolia, is an educator, certified coach, consultant, and thought leader based in Barcelona, Spain. Through Hola Magnolia, Erin is building a community of practitioners and change makers in the areas of, for instance, diversity, equity, and inclusion, identity and belonging, decolonization, community health, just to name a few. And I'm one of those community members. She's become my coach and mentor, and so I appreciate her so much. She is passionate about helping change makers earn a solid living, not just scraping by. She likes to say, nobody ever stopped doing justice work because they lost the passion. It's because it was, physically, emotionally, financially unsustainable. So this is going to be a great conversation. Can't wait for you to listen in. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Erin Corine, welcome to Yellfire. I'm your Yee! Woo! Woo! So yes, I'll do an intro to give you your CV and all that. But let's get started with the interview here. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah, just the brief synopsis of Erin Green.
Brief being the operative word here, right? Because if you don't say that, it might not be brief. And even though you do say that, it might
Yeah,
still
it's
might
fine.
not be brief.
However, I've
So,
got all day, but yeah, I want
right?
to honor
Okay,
your time.
audience. All
But
right, audience. I hope y'all have like whatever your comfort beverage is right now. No, I'm joking. So, my name is Erin Corine. As you said, I am the identity and belonging coach. I moved abroad when I was just before I turned 25 to live out a lifelong dream of becoming multilingual, specifically bilingual in English and Spanish. And
Mhm.
I found so much more than I bargained for that here, today, now 13 years later, my entire focus as a coach, as a community organizer, as a mentor is helping other change makers not only combat overwhelm and manage burnout as empathetic human beings, but also to monetize their impact and be able to really, really, really kind of move the needle on change wherever they are in the world, wherever it is that they call home. And I'll start with the funny part of the story is that most people don't realize that actually I'm a purebred musician on paper. So all of my degrees are in music. I've been a performer for most of my life, but I kind of have the part of me that is a cultural musician. I grew up in church in Northern Baptist Church in Chicago, going to church several times a week, specifically with my maternal family, so my mom's mom and sisters and grandmother, aunts, cousins, everything like that. And it was clear from an early age that I had that gene, the artist gene. I had the music gene. And then when I turned 12, I started playing my first instrument, which was the flute. That's what I went on to get all my degrees in. So people are like, how did you go from there to being, a certified coach and living abroad?
Yeah.
And where does Spanish come into the picture? And
Mm.
and what about then when you pivoted and did your own native music again? The long of the short of it and the short of the long of it is that I started to recognize that those innate gifts that I had were not an accident. They were not just something that I loved to do. They were not just the vocation that I had chosen, but they were my way of connecting and creating bridges between communities, between cultures, between different styles of music,
Mm.
even. And recognizing that in and of itself was a language, the ability to not only tell stories through music, tell stories through other disciplines of art that I picked up as I went along. I also write and I've dabbled in spoken word poetry through my music projects.
Cool.
I realized that when you go to a new place, which was my experience at 25, you start to meet people from all over the world. And when you have nothing else in common but being in the same time and place, you just start to relate with what you have in that moment and you work backwards from there. So as a musician, I started realizing just by way of doing music that other people recognized or would it would ring a bell to a certain memory in their own country, in their own language, with their own families, right? Where they learned my culture or learned about my culture for the first time. And I
Mm.
started to realize that, wow, everybody has such a unique story with my own culture and the things that
Mm.
they've learned about Black America through the movies, through our music and things like that, which can be right or wrong, right? It can always
Yeah, sure.
depend. But I also recognize that by being able to connect the dots of what our native music and traditional stories were about, you started to realize that lots of times what people were identifying with in our music and our culture was a common story,
Mm.
was a common struggle, was a common lived experience. And the first time that happened was with flamenco music from Spain, which
Ah,
is,
cool.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
my
yeah.
first. That's what pushed me over. That's why the Spanish speaking country I chose to go to ended up being Spain
Mm.
and not
Gotcha.
Mexico or Argentina, where I
Mm-hmm.
knew more about the languages and the cultures
Mm-hmm.
because I had grown up with people with either parents or other family members from those two countries specifically. So it was almost one of those two countries. And then I fell in love with flamenco music and I was like, okay, and shortly after that, an opportunity to come to Spain to go study my master's degree at Berklee
Wow.
College of Music came up. And again, music was always my passageway. It was always the key to the doors that opened,
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to open and walk through to build
Mm-hmm.
and find these different parts of me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it was when I started using music as my passport to other cultures, to new
Mm-hmm.
communities, to open new conversations, or to start from that common experience we were having in the present at a concert, at a show, whether it was mine or someone else's, then you start
Mm-hmm.
to work backwards and see how much we have in common, how
Yeah,
many
yeah.
similar stories of struggle, of oppression, of racism, of, persecution, of genocide, of enslavement, all these different things, of displacement of indigenous populations. You start to hear so many different variations of these stories. And I realized, wow, music isn't just about enjoyment, for me at least. It's also a key to that common understanding that allows us to align on our path to collective liberation. And
Yeah,
that's when I
yeah.
started realizing that art was the keys. That was the gift that I was given,
Mm.
but the purpose was what I had to find being abroad, and realize that I don't just want to make music. I don't just want to be on stages. I don't just want to play my instrument that I've put in 10,000 plus hours, those mastery hours that they always tell you you need at least 10,000 hours
Right,
for
right,
this. Like, oh
right.
yeah, been there, done that. There's nothing I will do better in this world than play my first instrument because I've put in the hours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what it's taught me is that your gifts are the gateway to
Mm.
discovering purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
once you realize that, you get to use that gift not as a means to an end, like this is my job, like this is my whatever, right? It's also, this is my clue. This is how I will find other people that communicate or that speak this language, whether music
Mm-hmm.
or adjacent art forms. And through those art forms, we know each other on such a deep and meaningful level. And
Yeah.
as you get to that, you really start to find out what that so many of us really do care about each other's stories, about each other's pursuit of liberation,
Mm-hmm.
about each other's, individual fights, and about some of the parallels between them. So for me, it became inevitable that as I was teaching more students in music or meeting more people, being on the road with other musicians or having my own concerts and building my own following, when I got to
Mm-hmm.
my second city, which was Madrid, I went from Valencia to Madrid, where I was for 6 years. I started to realize that this isn't this is real life now. This isn't just have a job and do it every day and get a paycheck every two
Yeah,
weeks,
yeah.
which I've never really had that life.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how can I use my craft to reach people, and then when I reach people, how can I continue to help people and guide people. And about 6 or 7 years into my time in Spain, I realized that, wow, why am I looking for a blueprint? I'm the blueprint. I
Mm.
literally
Yeah,
picked up my life at 24, which wasn't much, right? Like, wasn't much except,
yeah.
what I was able to do, my scholarship, I got to go study grad school, et cetera, et cetera. It was, wow, this is one blueprint that works for finding yourself in places that you didn't even know you could experience belonging,
Mm.
realizing that you have everything you already need to thrive in those places, and that a lot of the issues that we face exist in those places too. And it's up to us to kind of get together and figure out what are ways in which we can take those individual talents, those vocational skills, and those hopes and dreams and aspirations, and that sense of collective and individual purpose to help each other, to support each other, and to build truly polycultural communities, not just places where everybody minds their own business. And yeah, I have
Right.
neighbors from another culture. No, but
Yeah.
do you interact with them? Do you know their
Yeah,
story? Do
yeah,
you
yeah,
know what
yeah.
they struggle with every day?
Wow.
You know?
Oh, wow.
So it's been an interesting journey. And like I said, that was the that was a short story, but I think for me, it comes down to realizing that there's a really special both and about being an artist, because yes, I put in the work to be a performer. I've spent
Hmm.
more than, a quarter century becoming a musician and
Hmm.
performing on stages. But the common thread between what I do as a coach and what I do as a creator, um, and even what I do as a mother, right? And what I do as a nurturer and as a co-leader of a family, of a household, is that I exist to help people find the best parts of themselves, to be able to make a living and support themselves with it, but
Hmm.
also to be able to make an impact, because that's what I've managed to do in these last 13 years, especially the last 13 years since I've moved abroad.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm really glad you brought the music in. I was going to ask about the connection to your path as a musician, and you presented kind of a more holistic and a more positive vision of the image that came to me was Woody Guthrie's guitar that says this machine kills fascists, which um, your anti-racism work and
And
in that framework. So that's what well, I thought, well, that's the connection. But what you're talking about is, more holistic and more connective and community building. I want to get into community building a little more too later, but so I really appreciate what you said and all those connections that you brought. So I want to dig deeper into your current work and kind of give us an overview of the evolving Hola Magnolia universe and what you're doing.
yeah, well, thank you so much for that. One thing I will say about that before I talk a little bit about Hola Magnolia is that you really said it, right? It's what I'm talking about in the synopsis, like with the synopsis I just gave you of the who, what, where, when, and how of where I am today as someone who is an artist and a coach and also an entrepreneur, right? An impact entrepreneur.
Hmm.
But it's that I speak about it in these kind of ethereal terms in this holistic manner of like, can't we all just get along away, But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's the ideal, right? That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we're striving for. That is the seed we're trying to plant, whether we
Hmm.
ever see it burst through the earth or not, right? But that is
Hmm.
the seed we're trying to plant, is that one day we can just talk about who we
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
and not have to focus on how hard it was for us to get there.
Right.
But when you think about, what it takes to get there, especially using whatever vehicle you have available to you, my introduction to protest music was Nina Simone. It was starting a
Yeah, yeah,
project,
yeah,
a
yeah,
project
yeah.
with Nina
Oh,
Simone, because somebody asked me to do
yeah,
one,
yeah.
because Spain, at the end of the day, is still a predominantly white European
Hmm.
colonial power,
Hmm.
and they see a black woman and like lose their shit. And it's even worse if they find out that I sing. It's like I almost wish I could, when they say, oh, you're black from the States, do you sing? I wish I could say no. I really
Oh,
wish.
yeah, sure, sure.
Greg,
Oh man,
I
yeah, yeah.
wish, I wish so bad I could say no. It's like they say, oh,
Oh,
you're black from the
yeah,
States,
yeah.
you must can dance. I wish I could say no. I really
Yeah,
wish I could. I wish I could be like, no, I don't dance.
yeah.
No, I don't eat that. No, I don't do that. But unfortunately, it is a blessing and a curse that I fit a lot of cultural molds, and I'm not mad at that. But that's how I take that opportunity to be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're not. This is not all of us. We're not a monolith. But anyway, point being, Nina Simone, and I think about that really important call from one of her most important interviews, that an artist's duty is to reflect the times. That is the most important call to action I've ever received from someone that I consider to be my musical fairy godmother.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Interestingly enough, my daughter's birthday is just a few days after her. She's also a
Oh,
February Pisces.
wow,
And
wow, wow.
so Yeah, there's a lot of conjunctions. Her death date is close to my partner's birthday. You know, there's a lot
Wow.
of yeah, it's really wild the
Yeah.
way some of the dates. And another one and another really important artist activist for me is Victoria Eugenia Santa Cruz, who's from Peru. She's Afro-Peruvian poet.
Mm.
She and I share a birthday.
Oh,
So
cool.
when I think of people who made it very clear to me that there's a really, like I said, a really sacred both end of being an artist, is that
Hmm.
we are here to observe and maintain and preserve and to canonize the human condition, to
Hmm.
um, lay the foundation for ceremony, to observe, to ritualize the human
Mm.
experience. But we
Yeah.
are also here to tell the story. We're
Yeah.
also here to remind people where we came from so that we don't end up back there again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're here
Wow.
for a lot of special reasons. There was a really interesting quote that I heard at the very beginning of the genocide in Palestine, or this particular surgence of the genocide in Palestine,
Hmm. Hmm.
This October 2023. And it was, if you want to know who is the oppressor and who is being oppressed, look at whose art is being erased. And that
Yeah.
meant a lot because being, a descendant of African American survivors of chattel slavery
Hmm.
and displaced and genocided Native people in the United States as well, both
Mm.
and
Wow.
this is like a lived experience. We live this and we experience this in every single generation that has ever
Hmm.
existed in the history of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the ideal is to get to a point where we can just talk about where we are and where we want to be. But
Hmm.
in order to get there, we have to never forget what it took our ancestors, all of our ancestors, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody has generational trauma and generational wisdom, both and.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's understanding where all our ancestors have been so that we can learn from those mistakes or learn from even those triumphs and wins, put them all in the pot and continue forward. So yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to
Right.
say, is that absolutely, like, the protest music is also important. The
Hmm.
sticking it to the man is also important. The refusing to go in places where people that look like you would never be able to set foot if they weren't on a stage. All of those things, they're still relevant. They're
Yeah.
still relevant. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you just break into Mississippi Goddamn when people ask you to sing?
Low key, sometimes that was one of the most fun tunes that I ever learned, because it, the song itself sounds really up. It's a
Yeah.
juxtaposition of
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
being spoken about,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Hmm.
talking about these children, these little girls being blown up in a church in Alabama. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot
Yep.
get around the fact that it is literally talking, like, it was a response to that
Yeah.
specific the I think it was in Montgomery, right? The
Right.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
church that was set on
Oh,
fire.
yeah. Yeah.
And but the song itself is just a complete absurd, like it's a completely absurd interpretation of that event, because it is absurd. It is absurd that you have to consider that four little girls can go to a church and never come out because people just didn't
Yeah.
want them to exist. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds absurd, doesn't it?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the juxtaposition is really, 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 really interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
Mississippi, goddamn, it's funny you said that exact one, because not only is my family from Mississippi, but also, like, that particular song is one of the songs that I've done the most on a stage.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Everybody knows about Mississippi. Yeah.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
Everybody
All
knows
right.
about Alabama. Everybody knows about Mississippi.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
All right. I'm gonna look for clips on.
Goddamn.
I'm gonna look for clips on YouTube. All right. So okay. And maybe if if you want to skip over this, that's fine. But I do want to give you an opportunity to, because I'm super excited about like getting deeper into the identity and belonging groups and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But I think I kind of knew about reparations race last year, and like it was on the edge of my consciousness. But just tell me about how uh, the current evolution of your work, is falling into
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, thank you so much for that invitation. So it does make sense for to give the foundation. So Hola Magnolia is again, the threads are they're really threading themselves, right? Because you mentioned Mississippi, goddamn, and that always makes me think about my roots to Mississippi. Well,
Hmm.
Hola Magnolia, the name of my company, is from the moment in which my cousin from Mississippi that I had not seen for about 20 years came to visit Madrid when I was still living there for her 50th birthday.
Wow.
She and I, like I said, hadn't seen each other for 20 years since a family reunion. The last time I went to Mississippi and I felt the tension for the first time, I was about 10. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be here. Like, it's just something was
Hmm.
like, I can't be here. Right.
Yeah.
Point being, but we had been connected on Facebook. And Stacy comes, and she had such a great time, and she was so excited to come. And I was so busy with my art space that I did end up like winning an award for, but it was so stressful. It was like, wow, I was in over my head completely. But there were a lot of beautiful things that came out of that year. This was the end of June, about this time in 2018, but it was a little later, as the end of June. And so my cousin comes to visit. And a year before that, I had started to get this feeling like I really needed to reconnect to something. And this is important to like the identity and belonging work that I do before I called it that. And my cousin, she was coming, and it was exciting because I hadn't seen some of my family in a little while, but it was nice to have a family member that had been watching my work from afar. This is as I was starting to come into my own as an artist activist, and it was being
Hmm.
less I was being less, I guess, compartmentalized about the part of me that really cared about racism and some kind of superficial, um, so some sort of like kind of, I guess, I don't want to call it superficial, but it's like my limited knowledge of politics, but very, very extensive knowledge of kind of the sociology of politics. And
Hmm.
I was starting to talk about it more on Facebook. This was a big thing. This was after the really big explosion of Black Lives Matter from
Hmm.
2016, even before that, 2014, all the way through 2018. And of course, with the second bubble bursting with George Floyd's murder and all of the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
murders we found out about that year. So
Hmm.
point is, she comes to visit, and I had started to feel like I need to find something that builds a bridge between who I was when I got here and who I'm becoming as I spend more time here. It's feeling like I have to mask all the time, whether I'm with the Americans and the international communities, or if I'm with the Spaniards. I have to take parts of myself off the table that offend them or that make them feel like
Yeah.
they'll never play blues music good enough because they weren't born in the Delta. That's another story. That's a whole nother episode, Craig. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point is that I was feeling like, and out of nowhere, the lyrics, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, clean and fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh from strange fruit popped into my head out of nowhere.
Ooh.
And my mind fixated on the word magnolia. And I
Hmm.
was like, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Maybe I should find some magnolias. And so then I went down a rabbit hole. It's like, I wonder if there's some magnolias here. Where are they native to? And again, it sounds ridiculous that I'm looking up where the Magnolia grandiflora is native to when it's literally native to my native land in the United States. On both sides, the stolen Africans that were brought and were settled on the Delta, and
Hmm.
the indigenous ancestry that we have through the Delta of Mississippi and then the north
Hmm.
of Mississippi into Tennessee. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, that's really interesting. So I forgot about it, and then my cousin from Mississippi comes to visit, and I'll never forget. I was like, Stacey, I don't know if I have time to see you that much here. Like, I'm so sorry, but she's like, girl, this is my solo trip for my 50th birthday. Don't even worry. If I can just see you for a minute, I'll be good. Of course, that made me want to see her even
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. 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 Sure.
So, we hung
Yeah.
out. I met her at the equivalent of like a Panera Bread in the center of Madrid, right? Literally at the 00 point. We go walking down towards the palace. Now, this was my last month of living in this apartment. I had lived in for 3 years. And remember, a year before, I was like, I need to find something that feels like home. This is this. So Stacey and I are just hee hawing through, Calle Arenal. We're in Opera in front of the Teatro Real. Like we're just kicking it, right? Like we are just hee hawing. People are like, who are these women and what did they drink? We hadn't drank anything. We were just, cousins. And we
Yeah.
go and sit in front of the palace on this little round benches. This is a little spot called Plaza del Oriente. We sit down, and we're like, ha ha ha, just finished laughing about something. She looks up, she goes, huh, what are all those magnolias doing so far away from home? And I looked at her, I'm like, what? And she's like, you don't see that giant magnolia tree? It's even in bloom. Isn't that cool? And I looked at her, I was like, are you serious? And she looked at me, she's like, wait, what's wrong? Well, she didn't know what I had just told you, that I had
Right.
spent an entire year seeing if there was an arboretum with some magnolias. And it sounds absurd even now because they are literally right. Specifically the Magnolia grandiflora. Why? Because when they went, they brought seeds back.
Yeah, sure.
right?
Yeah,
So they are, and they do grow really well in a lot of the different climates in Spain, not all of them, but
yeah.
some of them.
Hmm.
And when I tell you, I broke down in tears and swung myself over that branch and cried for about 15 minutes. The only picture of that
Wow.
moment that exists, my cousin took. And I'm going to tell you this, Craig, she died 4 years later.
Oh, wow.
She died 4 years later. That was the last trip she took.
Mm.
And in that trip, she basically, by showing me those trees that had been in bloom at that time because we'd had a cold spring and they all kind of burst forth at the same time, that was the moment. That's the very first magnolia moment. And that is the moment that I was affirmed by God, the universe, ancestors, everybody, that if these trees uprooted and taken from their home could thrive here, then so could I.
Wow.
And that is the story of Hola Magnolia. That is why the company is called Hola
Oh
Magnolia,
my
and that is why
gosh.
identity and belonging is the lens through which I do liberation work. Because if I can
Mm.
empower you, if I can make you believe that you can do anything you want, then you
Hmm.
will.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Cool. Cool. Um, that that is the best origin story ever. That's that's really cool. Wow. Thanks for I did not know any of that, so I really
I love
appreciate.
that you didn't know that. So it made the shock factor. It made the shock factor more authentic because you
Yeah,
had
yeah.
no idea.
No, I was
But
like,
but
yeah.
so Ola Magnolia as the parent company of all the projects I do, and I didn't rebrand my coaching practice to Ola Magnolia until 2020, right before I got my first non-music coaching certification. But it was the first year that I did DEI consulting after having been a DEI grad assistant in my college of music when I was doing my grad school
Okay,
degree. So I started
gotcha.
in DEI in 2013
Hmm.
because I was the first grad assistant, because this was a new graduate program. So I was the first grad assistant to the Student Affairs and Diversity Inclusion Office between Valencia and Boston. I even traveled to Boston to do some work there.
Wow.
And that's what I was doing while I was studying my master's. And so coming into change work through music first was like basically I started where I ended up, which is that I believe wholeheartedly in the power of building the most impactful um, practice you ever could, like the most effective and sustainable impact you'll ever build is right at the intersection of vocation and passion, not on one side or the other, but at the
Hmm.
intersection. As in
Hmm.
your vocation, those things, the skills that you have, the things that you do so well, the things that nobody can tell you you are not a beast at, the
Yeah.
things that people call you time and time again for because that is what they know you for. That's how you've changed their lives. And passion, the issues, the communities, and causes that you care about. That's simple.
Hmm.
So Ola Magnolia has always centered around this idea. Even when I wasn't really clear on brand identity, I just knew this company was called Ola Magnolia and that story was going to be the light chaser for everyone. That everybody wanted to have that aha moment where they realized that nobody could tell you shit from that moment. That was
Hmm.
the moment from which I knew nobody could tell me shit anymore about what I was good at and what I was meant to do in this, but also I wouldn't take no shit no more. After that
Yeah,
moment, I
yeah,
also stopped putting up with people trying to shrink me or trying to tell me, no, you're being
yeah,
too this or this or that. Or I would have a gig and they're like, do your hair like, the ladies in the 60s. And I'm like, I will
oh,
do my hair however I want.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You will not tell me
yeah,
how to perform
yeah.
blackness so that your white
Oh,
audiences are happy. You will not do
yeah.
that to me.
Whew.
Right. And so I
Oh
was
my God.
living a lot. I was living a lot of the teachings what I'm giving you all now. This is partly lived experience and part textbook DEI,
Hmm.
like just training and a lot of experience in DEI,
Hmm.
of consulting, of building systems for people, building programs to help teach people the ABCs of DEI. And the
Yeah,
reason why I'm so tired of that is because, okay, I'm ready for you to learn how to actually use these ABCs.
yeah,
Like, we're done with the
yeah,
ABCs. I need you to be able to write
yeah.
words now. I need you to be able
Spell,
to write words now.
please.
Okay, you know how to write the words. Now I
Yeah,
need you to write a book, right? Now
yeah,
I
yeah,
need you,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's like anything with education, anything with mentoring, is that you learn as you go who your people are. Some people are incredible kindergarten teachers. It ain't me. Right.
yeah.
Some
Right, right.
people really, really hate teaching teenagers and college and pre-professional because you feel like they're entrenched and you can't teach them. Those are my people. That's
Yeah,
where
yeah.
I really love to catch people when they're on their way to the next best thing they'll ever do with their lives, because there's this clarity and conviction a lot of the time in like the core of what you believe and what you're good at. All you
Yeah, yeah,
need is
yeah.
guidance. All you need
Yep,
is a compass,
yep,
and
yep, yep.
Ola Magnolia, in a way, so the communities are very much about just putting like-minded people in the same space. And obviously you as part of our virtual village in the Changemakers Haven, which is our baseline community where people come to our webinars and then they get access immediately to that free community. It's really about people understanding that there's nothing wrong with an echo chamber if it keeps your nervous system regulated enough to get back out there and do the work.
Oh,
We're not
yeah.
here taking
Wow.
abuse on social media to build character. We're not, nope, that doesn't that doesn't build character. All that does is raise blood pressure. Okay. Like we are not here to
Beautiful.
take abuse and deal with ignorance to build character. We are here to close the doors, start the fire on the Bunsen burner and get to work in the lab. That's the kind of stuff that we do in the virtual village, because when I realized that, these social media sites, I mean, you can see it, I'm sure, when you go from LinkedIn to like Instagram and these others, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I forgot it is a wild, wild freaking West out here.
Yeah.
People are so mean. People are
Yeah.
so mean. And you got to figure, even on LinkedIn, people can still be mean sometimes. But it's like you get back out on TikTok and bad acronyms. I'm like, who raised you?
Yeah.
Like, this cannot be a real person. And sometimes, it is, right?
Yeah.
So, what I've gone from really just wanting to kind of be people's coach, really trying to figure out like what my title was. And I'll never forget a couple of years ago when I realized I'm the identity and belonging coach. It's because I realized the thing that I talk about and think about the most every single day is identity and belonging, partially because I'm forced to think about that every day. I am a Black woman immigrant to a predominantly white country, and I navigate my everyday in 3 languages in a place where I'm being constantly questioned as to whether or not I belong. Well, when you realize that you get to decide whether or not you belong, you have a lot of power. And there's nothing more meaningful to me than, again, like I was telling you before, helping people realize that power wherever they are, But I think as we move into like kind of the other type of work that we do in Hola Magnolia, the reparations race, as you mentioned, is like essentially that's an example of, okay, here's what I teach you, but here's how I show you. And it's almost even more important that, as there's a common saying that watch what I do as much as I want you to listen to what I say. Don't just listen to what I say. Watch what I do. And what I do every year with the reparations race is I walk the talk. Because I tell people, look, I care about Black people and I care about giving back to my community. I care about identifying and leveraging even my own privilege as a Black woman from the United States, that I have passport privilege as a Black woman who is not dark skinned, not light skinned, and I don't benefit from like the type of privilege that light skin, for example, would afford me, but I'm not marginalized to the level to which dark-skinned Black women are, for example. Like there's a lot of responsibility when you recognize every single person has privilege. That's just one example, right? But being from the US, my first language being English, all of those things are currency. And I've seen it up close every single day for the last 13 years, the way people's entire energy like changes when they find out I'm from the US versus having come from another African country or another place where they have a preconceived notion of who those people are, especially countries that have been colonized by Spain, right? So people treat me differently when they think I'm from the Dominican Republic than when they find out I'm from Chicago.
Okay. Yeah.
It's wild, right? And so that lived experience has made it really, that's how I embody the concept that every single person knows or has access to something that is vital to someone else's survival. And for me, coming from the US, where there's a dark side of capitalism, and then there is a type of leveraging of capitalism that you can use to benefit people today. Unfortunately, the currency that we use today in this age is paper money, is capital, right? So in the US, I have more access to, or through our systems, I have more access to capital. And I also have more access to people that are operating more fluidly with capitalism. Here, you might get people to take you in to give you a meal to do this or whatever, but to get people to donate to a campaign or to send money or to even support certain things is so difficult. But I have this whole network of people from the US that care about issues that affect us. So what happens, I am able to make money or raise money or do certain things on this side and inspire global Black communities in other parts of the world, to find those people around them that will pour money into certain causes, that will understand and want to participate in micro reparations movements at the community level. But
Nice.
until
Okay.
they've heard that conversation being had elsewhere in the world, they're not even thinking about whether that will work for them. So when I think about the reparations race and the amount of money we've been able to raise and move and facilitate over the last 4 editions since December 2022, it's because I was like, I'm so tired of waiting for somebody to come save me with their investment or with their
Right, right,
capital.
right.
I'm going to put out the reason here why you should support me as a Black woman, just barely postpartum, trying to make it as an impact entrepreneur and freelance artist. Here is the how and the why. Here's the part of my situation that is systemic in nature. I'm a Black woman, and it is statistically more difficult for me to secure investment loans, capital of any sort.
Right.
But then here's the part that I can control. I am a growing business owner, and here's what I am doing to show that I am worthy of your investment, and that when I have money, I pour it into my community. So it's like, again, that duality of, here is what I cannot control. And if you have the resources to help me bridge that gap, here are the reasons why you should. And on this other hand, here is what I can control, and basically watch my smoke as I keep on moving up that down, as I keep on like running down that track, showing you what happens when you take a chance and simply do the right thing with your money as a non-Black person, or as specifically as a white person who has access to resources or a privilege that, or credibility that people like me do not, right? So the reparations race, there was a moment it was going to be its own thing in the family of brands in Hola Magnolia. I think now we've scaled it back to, it's just our kind of annual real push to get people to take reparations into their own hands. But for me, this is my walking the talk at least once a year, but many times, throughout the year, I focus all of my energy on uplifting the global Black community. And because Juneteenth is this, historical part of our history as Black Americans in the US that was kept from us for so long, for me, I will be celebrating Juneteenth like till the end of my days, because it is this really powerful reclamation of what freedom could look like when it's supported by people, not just by people that look like you. Rather, you're not fighting for it anymore, you're simply just living it, and to use this particular holiday, bring it to people who don't know what Juneteenth is in our country, and inspiring them to find their own Freedom Day or create their own Freedom Day, and also leverage the concept of micro reparations to get people, to incentivize people to not bridge the gap because there is a tangible return on their investment, but because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you brought in the capitalism piece, the world we live in. And that's really helpful to understand the connection to reparations race with that. But you're also, you're kind of walking the talk, but you're part of what you do is you are helping impact entrepreneurs recognize, that capitalism is the world we live in. We all got to eat, so let's help you make money for what you're doing and the impact you're making on the world. So, full disclosure, dear listener, I'm an onboarding client of Erin Corine's, and I'm super excited to learn more from her, and encourage anybody who's in this space to who is trying to do work that makes an impact in the world for good to consider working with her. So, but I do want to learn more about how you're helping people do that. So.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And you already know, I mean, so even since being in, the group that's now the Change Makers Haven, that's formerly known as the Accomplice Accelerator, I think for me, what's so meaningful is just seeing the way people interact once they realize they're among safe people. And just getting to know you and your work over the course of the last couple of months, it just, again, gives me hope that comes back around to the reason why now I'm pivoting my messaging to be very clear that I help impact leaders and change makers make money with what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you make money with what you do, you are more likely to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is really actually that simple.
Huh.
If you are able to feed yourself, to pay your mortgage, to build wealth while making the world a safer place for other people to exist, you're going to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to keep
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So I need you to make money doing what you're doing. I
Yeah. Yeah.
need you to make money talking about racism. I need you to make money writing books about white privilege and how white people can continue to be part of this fight while also caring for themselves and being proud of who
Mm-hmm.
they are in this lifetime, because you only get one
Mm-hmm.
life at a time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't care who you were lifetimes before. I care that you know what you did lifetimes before, what people who look like you did lifetimes before, but you only get one life at a time. Right. So for
Right.
me, it's important. And you have, fellow change makers in our ecosystem that talk about this, that, when people are resourced, you stop doing this work from a scarce place or even
Mm-hmm.
from a scared place. And a you start doing it from, because I'm trying not to just use the antonym to express this, but you do it from a more boundless place.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know you're not
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about what you can achieve and what you can experience in this lifetime, but you're thinking about how amazing it must be 300 years from now to realize that the reason why you're able to enjoy the freedoms that you have is because somebody 300 years ago didn't care whether they lived to see it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Mm-hmm.
and it's so interesting to me that, like, we have been conditioned, those of us that are most likely to do good with the resources in our hands are the most conditioned to not talk about the resources that we need, because it's
Mm.
seen as greedy, it's seen
Right.
as being dirty, or it's seen as being an ulterior motive of some sort. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, everybody's got to eat, right?
Yep.
And I think for me, I deal with a lot of imposter feelings about this. As you know, I work with Arlen Hamilton, who, for those of you that are
Mm-hmm.
listening who don't know her, which I don't know at this point, she's kind of like taken over like every media source one by one, right? She's been on the magazine, she's been on this, she's grown, her venture capital company, a venture capital firm, Backstage Capital, to this astronomical place where,
Wow. Okay.
her entire like platform, she used to be homeless, and she
Mm-hmm.
basically built Backstage Capital from an airport as she was sleeping there, right? She said, if
Wow.
I'm just going to keep going one more day, a day at a time, a day at a time. She used to work in the music industry as well, but so she just recently in December, well, a little before that, but she announced in December that she had stepped down as MP, as managing partner of venture capital, of Backstage Capital, because she wanted to focus more on mentoring, because she realized
Mm-hmm.
that she hates, you can see this actually, and I'll link this so that you can add to your show notes for people to
Okay.
see the
Cool.
one-to-one of Arlen Hamilton from our Future of DEI. I'm not sure if you were in that conversation, but there was a one-to-one segment that I did with Arlen, and she talked
Oh,
about,
beautiful.
basically, I realized, I hate managing people. She's
Mm.
like, I don't like managing people. I like mentoring people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like being part of the reason why people realize that they can do whatever the hell they want, and
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
that what they have to offer the world means something to someone, and you have to keep going until you find out who that someone is. And I think the quote that sticks out the most, and people, is one of her most quoted quotes. It's in her first book, It's About Damn Time. Her second book was Your First Million, which came out at the beginning of 2024, and she just released Arlen's Revenue Playbook, which actually I'm featured in as well. But
Cool. Oh, thanks.
so her
Uh-huh.
first book was It's About Damn Time, and the most important quote from that book, in my opinion, and many people agree, is, "Be yourself so that the people looking for you can find you."
Wow.
And that call to action is something that I think every single person in her mentoring ecosystem, through Arlen's All Access, through Arlen's Mastermind, through
Mm-hmm.
Arlen's Inner Circle, and then even through your first 5K, the kind of small, the beginning group that she started to get people who aren't confident in their ability to make money, for her to show you just how easy it is to make money just being yourself, because everybody knows something. Again, like I told you, right? Like this prompt
Mm-hmm.
that came to me a little while ago, everybody knows something, whether they realize it or not, that is vital to someone else's survival. And until
Mm-hmm.
you dare to become that person, one conversation at a time, you'll never know,
Yeah.
right? Everybody is doing something they didn't think they could because you told them, or because you revealed to them, or
Mm-hmm.
because you helped them, or because you guided them, or because you coached them, or because you connected them to the right person.
Yeah.
you know and I think for me, it comes back around to, how can I help you do change work from a place of ease, from a place of abundant energy and and a deep well of inspiration, and to not have to do it alone or feel like
Right.
you're doing it alone. And what that's looked like for me is mirroring what I do in the communities, virtual and offline, in Barcelona and in person in the States whenever I go back. How can I let the work that I do offline online be a mirror to what I do offline, and vice versa? And
Hmm.
how can those change makers that are ready to move from passenger to protagonist, how can I help them sustain the work that they do so that they keep
Yeah.
doing it?
Yeah.
Because that's
Awesome.
really what it's about, right?
Hmm.
How can I help you get to a place where you know that if you need to go out and make the money you need to survive, you can go do that. So then you're at ease about that and you can go
Hmm.
back to doing the work that matters. And we
Hmm.
can keep getting you closer to those two things being the same thing,
Yeah.
so that the work, what matters, becomes the thing that makes you money. Right.
Right.
And so my focus on change makers is because I'm one, and because I've
Yeah. Yeah.
lived this mission of being a change maker, being an impact leader in so many different contexts, as an
Hmm.
artist, as a band leader, as a consultant, as a freelancer, as a business owner, as a
Hmm.
collaborator, right? I've been
Hmm.
in this role of needing to rustle up a way to keep the business going so that the business can help people,
Yeah.
and I realize one of my gifts is, part of this is just being a creative at heart and by birth and by vocation, is that I have this gift of hearing somebody's stories and putting that puzzle together,
Yeah.
because I've had to do that so many times for myself and for other people. Something about a musical brain combined with like a tactical exercise, it's just, that's my sweet spot, that's my zone of genius, that's my intersection of vocation and passion, is that I can create a framework out of anybody's life story, and I want to
Mm.
be doing that more. I
Yeah.
want to be helping people see the change they want to make as possible,
Right.
as almost inevitable, not just possible.
Oh, I
So
love
it's
that.
really about the conversations making you realize that there's a spark there, or that there's an identity question that's holding you back, or
Hmm.
you're not quite believing in who you are. And as we work through that, you get to recommit to the work through this new lens of yourself, seeing yourself a different way. That's when the magic happens, when you're sure that who you are is who you want to be. And then you get to be that person in the context of the work you want to do, So it's again, it's both things. It's being confident in who you are and being held by me as a coach, but
Hmm.
then actually being accompanied by me, like as a mentor that has been there and done that and had to figure out a way to make money while doing what I do so that I can keep doing it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we're bumping up on an hour here, but I want to close out with, so I want to honor your time, but I want to close out with, I think something that'll tie things together pretty nicely. I saw you post yesterday something about the importance of rest, and I know you're doing a cycle of interactions with part of your community around rest and rejuvenation this summer. So I want you to talk a little, just close out by talking, about the importance of rest for change makers, impact entrepreneurs, etc.
Yeah, Craig, that's a great answer. Parents, healers, like
Hmm.
doctors,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anybody, if you spend a large portion of your time or your mental energy holding space for other people, you have to make sure that you are also being held. There's really no other way. I think it can always be summed up simply by thinking back to that what everybody knows. If you've ever ridden on an airplane, you know that in case of an emergency, if the oxygen mask disappear, you have to put on your own mask before you put on
Hmm.
someone else's. Because if you pass out trying to help everybody else, you are no good to nobody.
Yeah.
Like you're not, right? Because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something that when you first hear it, because of the way we are hardwired to sacrifice ourselves in the line of fire. That's just what so many of us, like, our instinct is to flee and to save yourself, but
Mm.
we are wired as people, especially the further down any ladder that we are, by class, by race, whatever story we've been told about our worth, is the
Mm.
way that our fight or flight or fawn plays out in the heat of conflict or in the heat of danger, in the face of danger, right? And so if we are taught to always put ourselves on the line for other people, then that's what we're going to do when we're in that situation. So it becomes about, you have to practice for the reality that you want to embody. That means that you have to practice when the stakes are low, putting yourself first, so that when the stakes are high, not only do you have reserves of energy, but you also have a way about filtering what is worth exerting a little bit more energy and then just replenishing a little bit more later, because you have those sources and you have those systems in place to always replenish and to be focusing on your own self-care, to know what you want and need, right? When the stakes are low, you have time to actually journal and be in a 9-week coaching program with me, or to be in the identity and belonging lab, or to, you know, to be in our ecosystem and be in the community and be poured into on a regular basis. But if you are suddenly in the heat of battle, in the face of danger, and you don't know where to run to lick your wounds after you've fought the good fight, then you just don't, there's nothing to do. So for me, it comes down to putting your oxygen mask on before you help other people, because again, you're no good to anybody if you're dead. This idea of sleeping when you're dead, no, when you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah.
Listen, like all
Don't
of
make it happen any sooner.
all of the, you know, see you on the other side and, oh, next lifetime and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but what about this lifetime?
Yeah.
What about this lifetime? And in this lifetime, in order for us to sustain the demand that we are all facing as change makers, you have to know what gives you energy. You have to know what replenishes you. That's why in my programs, we always start with the 4 pillars of being, which is your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religion. It just means, what do you connect to as a source that is intangible, that is omnipresent but intangible? What gives you a sense of meaning or purpose beyond what you can see and feel and sense with whatever senses are available to you, you know? And it's really about connecting to that, staying close to people, places, and things that feel like sunshine to you, you know, being really present in whatever it is that gives you more energy, connecting to joy. If you go to my LinkedIn right now, you'll see a post that brought me so much joy today. For anybody listening, I'm obsessed with Tiny Chef on Instagram. Please go follow Tiny Chef. Tiny Chef is the best. But all that childlike humor is my saving grace, you know? So it's like, but I know that because I have been alone in a foreign country for 13 years and I've had to create my own joy more times than I can count. So at this point, it really comes about, how can I teach other people to remember that the only way to continue to do this work is to replenish yourself, to talk about the things that deplete you so that you can avoid them, or to know where to recover if you are in a situation where you have to use all of your reserves or be super present and out there, or you just come off of a, you know, organizing run or whatever it is that you're doing, right? That's really the core of everything we do, because that becomes the power source to the impactful things that you really want to do over the course of your life.
Oh. Wow. Okay. I appreciate that. Yeah, those are lessons I need to keep refreshing myself on. So I appreciate it. Erin Corine.
We're just getting started, Craig.
I know. This is well, you know, listeners, I've had a couple of conversations now with Erin Corine, and I think you can see, you know, how life-giving her work is, and so I just so much appreciate your time here, and look forward to the next conversation. And folks, I'll, you know, put all her information in the show notes, and so if you can contact and, you know, learn from her and follow her on Instagram and wherever else she's in, LinkedIn and everywhere else. But yeah. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. We hope to see you in our Changemakers ecosystem over at Hola Magnolia.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna. Hey y'all, thanks for watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening. If you're on YouTube, this is my 3rd wardrobe change, so I have to make that a little more seamless in the future, at least the intro and outro. But again, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me and this awesome conversation with Erin Corine. If you want to learn more about her work, there will be links in wherever you're watching or listening, hopefully. And if there's not links on your podcast platform, Go to yellfire.substack.com and join us there, and all the links and there's more details there than you could possibly want, not just about Erin Corine, but this week in the news, that kind of stuff. So the Substack has more details, more information about what's going on in the world, especially as it relates to anti-racism and all that, and the lie of white supremacy, and the shitstorm that is life in 2025. All right, thanks again. Take care.